I would like to begin this video with an apology. I am so sorry this video has taken so long to make, but I downloaded a World War I mod from the workshop and now I have mustard gassed the entire planet. I don't know if there is such a thing as too much mustard gas, but if there is, we definitely haven't reached that point yet. Seriously, the atmosphere is about 50% mustard gas at this point, and I am not even sorry. Total War Millennium Modern Warfare is a hilariously unbalanced and unbelievably good time if you want to spice up your Total War gameplay. If you ever wanted to drive over thousands of zombies in a Tiger tank, no problem. You ever wanted to fulfill your grandfather's Vietnam wet dreams and make sure that the trees never speak Vietnamese ever again? Sure thing. You ever wanted to recreate the Hindenburg disaster? Well, that is possible too, but I don't recommend it because airships are incredibly expensive. Shit! As usual, I have one goal for this video, and it is very simple. Survive! I am going to try and survive the ultimate endgame crisis, but to make things a little bit more interesting, I also installed the better endgame mod. Again. This allows us to up the difficulty from 200% to 1000%. This means that the crisis factions will spawn with roughly 40 high-level armies each. That is over 1,000 armies that want to beat me like the piñatas at the birthday parties I wasn't invited to as a child. But that's not all. I also gave myself only 100 turns to prepare. So, will I survive, or will I be found on the floor of my own personal bunker with lead poisoning in my brain? Stick around to find out. Okay, so our story began in Altdorf, and the first thing we have to do is dealing with the people who claim that giving 90% of our nation's GDP to the army is a bad idea. Which is surprisingly easy when you give 90% of the GDP to the army. With our starting province firmly in hand, it was time for step 2 of my 3-step master plan. Conquering shit. And to do that, we're going to need some help. This is General Wilhelm von Solerhahn. I don't actually know if he has any formal military training, but when I told him that there are cowmen currently suplexing my peasants in Karaberg, he said the one thing I wanted to hear. Okay, comment section, this is LiveTobe here. I have a question for you. If you ate Beastman burgers, would you 100% become tainted with chaos? You know what, don't tell me, I'll find out eventually. Now the problem with playing as Karl Franz is that we are technically the head of all of this. Which means that 90% of our neighbors are technically already our subjects. They just don't help defend us or pay taxes, but we are still expected to help them if they are attacked and are obligated to try to stop them from killing each other. Which is often. This means that we only really have 2 options for our first round of expansion. And that is Marienburg or Bretonia. And while I would absolutely love to firebomb Bretonian farmers, I went with Marienburg for the simple reason that they are much closer. They do, however, have a pretty sizable army, and since I would rather suck the lead out of my service Luger than play a siege battle, I decided to lay siege to Marienburg and wait for them to stop being such chicken shit cowards and come out and face me like a man. What I hadn't counted on was a bald man and a guy in a pickelhaube charging my army from the rear, because why the fuck would I? And since Total War is Total War, this means that my entire army thought that it was a very good idea to turn their back against the actual threat and instead face down the Chromosome Brigade. But don't worry, because for every problem there is a solution. And today, that solution just happens to smell like mustard. With Marienburg under new management, we crossed the mountains into Bretonia like we crossed Bretonian farmers off the non-combatants list. You see, until we can confederate more imperial lands, we will have to build our economy in France. But first we actually have to convince them that working in my sweatshops is preferable to being run over by my new armored Mercedes-Benz, which is fucking sweet by the way. While here, I also took the time to shepherd Kemmler out of the retirement home where he had been convincing his fellow old people that they were his army of undead. Where did I take him? I shot him in a field somewhere, it's not really important, because it is time to go on my first official quest. Well, technically it's my second official quest. The first one was shooting a bunch of Norwegians heading south for the winter, but that one doesn't count because I only did it because I thought they were Danish. For our first actual quest, we have to stop a bunch of orcs from crossing the border at Blackfire Pass. Now, I won't say that it was easy, because it definitely wasn't easy. Easy isn't a strong enough word to describe the utter annihilation I visited upon these guys. From illegal immigration to robbery. In our next quest, a vampire had stolen the silver seal. I don't know what it is and I don't particularly care. But it is mine and I want it back. So we chased him up on this hill, and after giving a rousing speech, we put the vampires before a 1,000 guy strong execution squad. Our next challenge was dealing with Throt the Unclean, who had decided to declare war on me, which was very optimistic of him since we are strength rank 1 and he definitely isn't. The reason he could do this is because while we were introducing fire to the Bretonnians, I sent Helmut an offer he couldn't refuse. Which in hindsight was a very bad decision on his part, because he was about to get tag teamed by an ogre and a bipedal rat man. My army took position on top of this hill and we started blasting. This continued for 7 minutes straight. There were some unfortunate friendly fire incidents along the way where the ogres made it to our lines, but on the whole, it was a great victory. While that was going on, trouble was brewing in the Empire. Theodoric of Nordland has just declared war on Elspeth von Draken of Wissenland. This put me in a rather difficult position because both wanted me to join their side. Now, I could stay out of it, but that would make me look bad. So, like any good parent, I chose to believe my favorite and shot the other one in the face. Fuck. With the south under our control, our lands now butted up against Vlad's lands, and not in a good way. But since I don't have the cash to dig Sylvania off the map, we'll just have to do the next best thing. Conquering Sylvania will actually be an important part of our endgame strategy. You see, in 68 turns, over 100 armies will spawn in this general vicinity, and if we can hold them here, we might not be completely fucked. But first, we actually had to deal with Vlad. Now, normally killing him is a massive pain in the ass, but telling 12 heavy machine guns to unload on his face proved to be a very effective strategy. With Sylvania pacified, I had pretty much everything I wanted. From here, my plans were simple. Sell off any territory not in the Empire or Bretonnia and create speed bump states to buy me time when the apocalypse actually begins. It was now turn 60 and I was finally ready to finish my conquest of Bretonnia, which meant declaring war on the Wood Elves. My strategy for this war can be summed up with one sentence. The trees cannot speak Elven if there are no trees. I don't know how many incendiary rounds I dropped on those woods, but the fumes must have got into my head because I then absorbed the last Imperial faction. This caused my game to freeze for a solid 20 seconds. Now, I assumed that the game had crashed and mentally prepared myself to lose some progress. It's not a big deal, but it was annoying. But not as annoying as spawning the endgame crisis 38 turns too soon. Drunk on success, I had forgotten that the long victory condition for the Empire is unifying the Empire. I would love to say that this wasn't a problem, but it definitely was a problem. My armies were scattered to the four corners of my empire and I was about to get the pounding of a lifetime. and there wasn't much I could do about it. However, much like passing a car crash on the interstate, morbid curiosity came over me and I removed the fog of war to find out just how bad my situation really was. And the answer was very. After a quick estimation, we have roughly 240 armies on our doorstep. After the first turn, we lost 5 cities. 5 more were under siege and we had made a 12,000 gold swing from a positive 5,000 to a negative 6,000. I assumed that this was it. Like Icarus, I had flown too close to the sun and I was now rapidly plummeting towards my death. So, as a last act of defiance, I was going to turn my body into an improvised missile and crush the wood elves. Because if I am going down, I am bringing someone down with me. What I hadn't counted on was the forest helping me do it. Every battle I fought against the wood elves, the spawn zones were placed to give me the maximum amount of time to shell them as they advanced. This leads me to only one conclusion. Even the trees hate the wood elves and would rather die than to help them. So with their selfless sacrifice, my hope was rekindled. And like an Italian grandmother, I was going to repay them the only way I know how. By feeding them. We began in Bretonia. Here, the forces of Kemmler, the Red Duke and some dwarf guys were eating my peasants and killing my crops, which is less than ideal. Using my tactical genius, I lured the dwarves into a choke point where their numbers counted for nothing. Next was Kemmler. I had already killed him once, but it would seem that he didn't get the message. So I decapitated him with a tank. That left the Red Duke, and he had a lot of armies, but unfortunately for him, I had already gotten my funny moment by decapitating a man with a tank. So I just out-resolved all of his armies to death. Now, that might seem harsh, but I have a schedule to keep, and this is taking way too fucking long. In the east, we had more of the same, but the vampires actually declared war on the dwarves. But instead of using violence to determine the winner, they used gold that they stole from me like score. And I wasn't very happy about it. It took me roughly 12 turns of non-stop fighting and out-resolving battles to get our lands back in order. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but it took me 3 days and roughly 400 battles to achieve. With our home territory somewhat safe, I was feeling confident. We had survived first contact and it was time that we looked outside our own borders. Which is why I decided to confederate Volkmar's Desert Empire. This move of absolute financial brilliance will go down in history as one of the deals of all time. Because I am now losing 38,000 gold a turn. What did I gain, you ask? An angry bald man who likes to shout at the undead, which is fitting, since we're surrounded by them. And they're gone. And meanwhile, I have just sent my boy, Bobby Toddbringer, into a deep, dark hole. You see, the Chaos Dwarfs have tunneled through the earth at several key points around the globe. Now, I like to think of them as the drop from the new Total Recall movie, but with more indiscriminate violence on arrival. And I say new, it's like fucking 15 years old now, and I feel old as shit. Fuck! To my surprise, however, the Chaos Dwarfs have been almost completely wiped out, and while I do burn down several cities, it was actually pretty anticlimactic. The Short Kings on the other hand put up more of a fight, but not even they are short enough to walk under the clouds of mustard gas I filled the mountains with. With the mountains cleared, we herded Gorst and his undead minions into a canyon. I don't know what happened inside, but I imagine it's something like the Grom and Thrall vs Manroth fight scene from Warcraft 3, but with less epic fights and bigger mass graves. Having played for roughly 60 hours at this point, I realized that we still have to pacify all of China and Nagaron before I was done. But since there was absolutely no possibility of me losing anymore and I was getting absolutely fucking sick of clicking the auto-resolve button hundreds of times, I decided to speed up the process, and instead of walking to every city on the map, I turned off the fog of war and I teleported Carl around the map like some kind of vengeful god. This saved me days of recording, and most importantly, it saved my sanity. The only real problem I faced was the fact that Skaven cities cannot be seen, and every single city in China was a Skaven city. I burned down hundreds of them, but there were still a few left. I used the map overlay to look for rising Skaven corruption, but I didn't find any. I checked all the cities again, but still there was nothing. So I ended the turn in the hopes that something would turn up. I don't know what madness possessed Big Bird for him to declare war on me, but I wasn't very happy about it. And the same goes for these Viking dudes and the followers of Nurgle. I was losing my cool at this point and I was desperate to get a conclusion. So after having completely wiped these factions off the map and still being nowhere closer to finding last Skaven cities, I got desperate. I used console commands to give them a city, and then I deleted the entire faction out of the game. Does this invalidate my run? Maybe, but I don't care. Because I don't do this to flex on my fellow Total War enjoyers. I do it for the memes. However, after 60 hours, the memes have all turned into little Dark Age edits and 4chan green text videos about cheating women. So, with the last enemy faction out of the game, I ended the turn for the last time.
You are not welcome in...
I was a broken man at this point, but since I had seen the ultimate victory screen, this is where I called it. Not only to save my own sanity, but also so I could get this amalgamation of a video done, which... well, yeah, that worked out very well. Anyway, I hope it was worth it. Okay, with that out of the way, let's look at some stats. In the end, our highest income was 458,000 gold. We had 18 armies that fought a total of 1,002 battles. 901 of which we won. We killed 1,097 lords and 20,900 units. We lost 36 lords and 806 units of our own, and that is pretty goddamn good, if you ask me. And that is all I got, so thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one, which hopefully will not take as long to make. So thank you again. Write a comment to tell me what you want to see next, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!